I continue to be deeply disappointed about the Board of Elections' decision to eliminate two extremely popular early voting locations. The county's elected leadership has been on record repeatedly and explicitly calling for early voting sites that are accessible to public transportation, so low-income residents without access to a car can exercise their right to vote. Moving the sites away from metro regular bus routes and population centers runs contrary to the Board of Elections' duty and obligation to increase voter participation in our democratic process. At the Board of Elections' public hearing on early voting locations, dozens of Mid-County residents came out to testify in support of keeping sites in Aspen Hill and Wheaton. Both Councilmember Sidney Katz and I testified in support of retaining the sites in our respective districts. The lack of testimony in support of Bethesda or the East County should not have been interpreted by the board as the lack of need or merit for maintaining those locations. I'm not just someone who represented the East County as a member of the Board of Education and council member prior to redistricting. I also live there. My advocacy to retain early voting sites in District 4 on behalf of my constituents should never be construed as advocating against locations in other parts of the county. The Republican majority says they believe it is important for all parts of Montgomery County to have access to early voting locations. I couldn't agree more. My constituents living in Brookville and the citizens of Potomac deserve accessible early voting locations just like our neighbors in Wheaton and Rockville. 9 early voting locations for a county of 1 million people may not be sufficient. Long lines have plagued the recent elections, particularly at the Silver Spring Civic Building, where most of East County voters will now have to go. That is why Senator Rich Melanino and I are in conversation, working together to see if it's possible to pass emergency legislation in Annapolis early next session that will add 2 additional sites in Montgomery County. The legislation will explicitly list the locations of the sites and tighten their requirements to ensure our early voting sites are accessible and encourage voter participation. I look forward to working with Senator Madaleno and the rest of the Montgomery County delegation, my colleagues here on the council, to make sure all our residents, regardless of their economic means, have the chance to exercise their right to vote. So today I hope that we can engage in a conversation about the criteria that the board has utilized. I am very aware that this committee does not have jurisdiction over the Board of Elections. As you know, it's a state agency. But we do actually allocate funding to the Board of Elections, and it is our duty to provide oversight to make sure that the funding we're providing is utilized in the most strategic and the most targeted way. We need to leverage our limited resources, and so this is what this conversation is all about.